This week on Phantom Power Hour.
I have a lot of Neve flavored things here. Like the 573s were the first things I got. And the only difference between the 1084 and the 1073 on paper is...
Have you gotten hands-on with it in that
No,
facility?
it's not even hooked up.
What?
It's not hooked
How? Why?
But these were the first nice preamps I ever got. And then this...
What's going on, Jeremy? I'm not sitting at the table. I'm in a different place.
Exposed.
I could be a different building all entirely for all anybody else knows.
This is a different location for the show. Welcome to the control room. My cup is right off camera. We thought about talking about gear.
I like gear. You like gear.
I do. And in this context, kind of running down what I have, why I have it, and how I use it, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Maybe even some examples of some of these pieces of gear in use.
We can do that. Where should we start?
I mean, you tell me, man. Like, maybe we don't have to do everything in this order, but what is currently in use right now? What was like the first piece that you got out of this current collection?
The first was these guys right here.
Okay.
Vintech 573s.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying a 2-camera setup here.
That way you can see what we see.
Hang on. Got my buttons all mixed up.
No, I hate it when you mix up the buttons, especially like a button-down shirt. And you get done, you button that last button, and then you realize that you have them like offset.
There we go. So these Vintech 573s, they're like basically like Neve 1073s. Like in a 500 series rack, the smaller thing's called 500 series. It's a housing that powers everything, and you have these little modules that you can put in or replace with preamps, EQs, compressors. But these were the first nice preamps I ever got. And then this, Five Fish Studios, a very small known company, still exists. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this preamp exists. This company exists, and they sell like DIY kits and stuff. It was a really cheap way to get some killer preamps.
Is that one from a DIY kit, or was that a
pre-made
one?
That was a pre-made when I got it. But all of these, actually, these cappies, it was classic API at one time, is now just Cappy. I think for trademark reasons. These all were DIY.
Oh, so nice.
Every one of these I made, and this one doesn't work because of that. So I have to repair that.
I've done DIY pedals, but I've never done DIY rack gear. So is it similar vibe, or is it like PCB is already assembled and you just like put it in the box? Do you have to do a bunch of soldering and put the components on?
Oh, it's all, there's the organization of the components was like the biggest thing. Because you mean the way you're getting this so cheap is you basically have the wholesale things chopped up and it's all there for you. So you have to organize it. And I took the styrofoam that they shipped in and stuck it in the styrofoam and organized, because I had 8 of these to do.
Yeah.
So I just lined up all the resistors, labeled them, and then put them in rows. So
that's a good move.
I could quickly populate the PCB that way, and then populate a board, solder it, populate a board, solder it. So
for anybody watching this that, has either no idea about any of this gear, no experience, why would you even want these different preamps? Like, people might be thinking, I've got my Scarlett or my 003 or something. They have preamps on them. Why do I need to go and spend sometimes ludicrous amounts of money to get one other preamp?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, one answer is there's like fundamental things that they just do differently. Like these will have high pass filters built into them that I can use in different ways. I mean, most of your preamps are going to have pads, phase inversion stuff. Sometimes they have, I think all of mine actually, now that I'm looking, you have your preamp and then like essentially like an output fader so that you can saturate the preamp itself. Some you can't do that, especially on like your interface preamps. You have the dial and that's that.
Mhm.
Like you're not there's no components in there that you're gonna really want to saturate or can saturate.
Yeah.
Where that's the whole idea.
Getting the color right at the input.
And even like the different types of preamps are going to have like different ways that they break up. Like you'd reach for some like Neve style thing because it has just massive bottom end to it, or API because I think about them like they're a little bit faster. Like there's different characters, and a lot of times it's hard to talk. It's hard to describe, or you just kind of get to know that's the sound I'm used to. I like API on a kick drum or Neve on a kick drum. Everybody's different.
You can just use all the, hot button words like spongy,
warm. I'm trying not to, but this discussion is going to go there for sure.
Yeah.
And it's all of this is completely anecdotal. I'll say that, but it's the thing to take away from something like this is maybe mindset, not necessarily the gear itself. And maybe that's the way I'll approach describing it.
Yeah.
Because it's a kind of a weird thing to talk about, really, gear. I mean, I love watching gear videos, but
yeah, me too.
It can be hard to understand the motive behind what's happening.
So speaking of the motive, right, I asked you what the first piece in this current collection was, but if you were to go back in time with the experience and knowledge that you have now, and the question isn't what different gear would you get, but if this was still the same lineup, would you have started with something different? Is there something that you would have rather have had earlier in your career?
I don't know. I mean, when I was starting in a smaller studio, there wasn't a whole lot of options for like prosumer level type stuff. I think I would buy the best, the earliest, meaning like as much as I could afford. That's what I would do.
I think that's a good move. Yeah,
I'm monitoring. I would worry about monitoring way sooner in my career because I was definitely all more about gear for sure. I was stoked when I got the distressor right behind you. That was like my first
controversial distressor.
Yeah, that was my first outboard compressor. I was super stoked for it. But I mean, I was monitoring on stuff that was kind of a joke, so it really didn't matter because I couldn't hear what I was doing.
What were you monitoring on?
They were old broken tannoys. And I mean, the speakers themselves weren't bad, but the amp I was using couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like in an accurate way.
Yeah. They were in here for a second, right? Like at the very beginning?
Maybe in the very beginning.
Like kind of a red hue to them?
Those were Focals.
Those are the Focals. Okay.
Yes. Those were my Focal twins. No, those are great monitors. I like those.
Yes. Yeah.
No, these were trash.
Okay. Maybe I never saw them then. This was like the very first one.
Yeah. But I mean, if you can't hear what you're doing accurately, it really doesn't matter. Like the choice of preamp is you can't discern it if you can't hear it.
Which is why I went for the JBLs in my $1,000 budget home studio setup.
Stop it.
What monitors did Jeremy get? Oh, that's right. You
Headphones. ATH50X. Those are better than those tannoys.
They are good. So, you would have gone for monitoring sooner. What about like rack gear though? Would you have still let's assume that you had good monitors, and you were rebuilding this setup with the current gear you have. What order do you think you would go in with your understanding now? What's your biggest impact go-to piece of gear that you would have been able to use right out of the gate?
I think longevity. I mean, if you figure out the monitoring and that works, it would be whatever interface or converter setup that can grow. And for me, that's the Burls over here, which if we want to see them.
I've got to say, while he's getting that camera put in position, the sound before and after the Burls was pretty mind-boggling coming in here after you started putting those up.
This, I mean, if you're thinking about like a traditional interface computer setup, this is kind of like an interface. Think about this as an interface. It's just way less feature rich, but the things it does really, really well. And there's a whole school of thought like, do converters matter? I don't necessarily think it matters. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say burls are the greatest thing ever. I like them for what I do and how I work and how I push into them, because they do a thing. They saturate like crazy. Is that worth the money? That's up to you. But even the difference between, like, if you're talking clean converters, I think that starts to get into like very nuanced discussion very, very quickly. So here's what I have and why. Like, the burls are very much a sound. And when you're used to hitting like tape or stuff, it's very reminiscent of like hitting a whole lot of iron, like meaning like recording into a desk, because there's transformers in and out on this thing, like multiple stages. So I could be hitting a preamp if I want to, and then push really hard into this, and it's not like digital breakup. It sounds like you're hitting a desk or you're hitting tape, meaning it's gonna break up in a really pleasing way, and those transients are gonna be nice and tasty. And you, as a bass player, you've probably experienced that. Like, you may not know how, like, exactly how to describe what that is.
Yeah.
But you felt it, I think, the first time we did a session with these.
Definitely. Yeah. It is very hard to put words to it, but I don't know, man. It's just sweeter, I guess, to try to stay away from all the buzzwords.
There's going to be so many buzzwords in this. It's going to be hard. But the thing I notice going with these, and I don't think you have to have these. I don't think anybody has to have these. But the thing that it does for me is there's a lot less work on the back end, because I can push into these and get like a record sound quickly. One of the first few mixes that I took home and listened to and showed my wife, which is a girlfriend test, the wife test.
For sure.
Like, it's a thing.
It is, yeah.
And I mean, even she noticed, like, is this done? Like, no, this is the raw board bounce that we had from the day.
Yeah.
And like right there, I was like, okay, that was a decent purchase. So whether the argument is like converters make a difference or not, I think it's entirely a workflow thing for me. And that's how I justify that cost.
Yeah. No, totally understandable. As a session player that's done numerous sessions in here, I probably can't even count how many times I've heard an artist say something like, this is the best like unmixed sound that I've heard. And I'm not going to say that it's all because of that. I mean, Jeremy's got just a wealth of experience and understanding of how to get those source signals to feel nice right out of the gate. And I think that has a whole lot to do.
Just screwing stuff up over and over again.
But I think that there is something to, to throw in the buzzword, having like some analog signal flow that's not just relying on digital converters.
And these are digital converters. I mean, I think this is kind of as analog as digital can get.
Yeah.
Yeah, even that's like weird. I mean, can you do something like this with Universal Audio Apollos? Like, sure, if you wanted, like I did. I came from Apollos and I tracked through the Studer, was it the A800 on every channel that you could, so you're getting that analog juice on the front end. Like, I mean, whatever works for your workflow. But yeah.
What are in line with the burls? Were there other products that you were kind of contemplating when you decided to go that direction, or did you just know from the get-go that you wanted the burls?
I was going between like either expanding my Apollo setup that I had at the time or going down this road.
Mm-hmm.
They're very different roads, because this meant going Pro Tools HD, because that was a whole thing as well. And that this is what I landed on because of the commercial space, and different things happen here than what would happen in like a traditional like home studio.
Yeah.
But like this is kind of a right in between a home studio and a pro studio probably.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's any number of ways to go, but that is kind of what I built this around.
Isn't the main requirement to be considered like a pro studio having just faders upon faders in front of you that you can actually touch and move?
I mean, the desk is definitely a thing, but, which I've kind of gone anti-desk.
Yeah, you have.
I like having the different flavors of like different preamps. Like if I have API because that was a sound I knew. Because one of the studios close to where we went to school, they have a huge API legacy desk. And so I know the sound of that desk really well. This isn't exactly that, but it's that flavor. And I always liked that on drums. So I went with that.
Mm-hmm.
The Neves, like the vintage Neve preamps, you just kind of, I felt like I had to. And I like them.
Yeah.
I like them a lot. I have a lot of Neve flavored things here. Like the 573s were the first things I got. The actual vintage things pulled out of old Neve desks. And then this thing, which is like a Neve's new channel strip, the Newton, which is actually dope. EQ and compressor built right in. But yeah.
So what's your usual signal flow for these? Like what's your kind of default mode for what you're putting through your different channels?
So drums will live on the cappy stuff. So like these first 8 are pretty much always drum shells. The ISA stuff right here, the Focusrite, these little blue guys, like these are never like a first choice of preamp that I have, but I'm never disappointed with whatever goes in there. So
Well, I remember you talking about that when the Styx crew was in here, and you guys were like, "Yeah, it's never the first thing, but then I'm never disappointed with it."
It just works on every, like they sound great. Like those are old like ISA desks. Like people have entire studios built around this style of preamp, but this is my first like 8-at pre, meaning it expanded a setup from 8 inputs to 16, and I thought I was balling, and it was.
And I was.
So these are just kind of catch whatever, or if I want something really neutral, I go for this. If you start getting into like color and excitement, then we move on to the Neves. And this top one is a 1084. And the only difference between the 1084 and the 1073 on paper is the high frequency part of the EQ. There's like a selective band where this is just fixed as a high shelf.
Okay.
I mean, it's still a shelf, but you select the frequency where it starts.
Right.
And some people will say that's the only difference between the 1084 and the 1073. I think there's a vast difference, and I like the 1084 way better.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you all in all why, but it breaks up completely different from the 1073s. And I know the hype and legend that surrounds the 1073, but it's when you have a 1084, I use that. I'm just like, that's the sad part about it. And the 1073s, like we talked, like they're just so vastly different from each other.
Yeah. Have you made a video? And I understand that shootout videos, I won't even go down that whole rabbit hole of pros and cons about those, but have you made any type of shootout video for the Neve stuff that you have?
I've never, I mean, between the two?
And all, like, between these two and then the difference between this one and these two?
No, I never have, because I never had a good way to do it, but now I have actually, there's a video coming on it here soon, the Vanguard V44. It's a stereo condenser mic, and you can line up the pad because you can move where that bottom element sits, and you can actually split that signal. So you have two independent elements going to two different preamps if you want. So I ran in one session I had going to a 1084 and then one of the ISAs. So like kind of clean, dirty, and then clean. So it'd be interesting to see, like, to use the same thing on both 1073s.
Yeah.
Because then I could actually articulate that difference. Because the only other option is to go line in from the DAW, but then it already saw a preamp.
Yeah.
Or to split it with the patch bay. But
tainted.
yeah. I mean, it's hard to do, like, in a session setting because that's a whole lot of routing and special stuff you have to keep track of while somebody's paying for the time.
For sure. So what other goodies do we have over here? I see you got the G comp, right? Is that what that one's called?
Yeah, this is Audioscape. This is the G stereo. So this is like an SSL style thing. Yeah, so this is Audioscape, like their take on an SSL G style compressor. The main difference being that there's a side chain. So it's going to ignore frequencies below, like, I think, I don't know. I think, well, I want to say 125. I could be wrong. Somewhere between 100 and 150 hertz. Anything below that, it's not going to listen to, so that you can compress the rest of the signal. Now, most people would say that's like blasphemy on an SSL style thing because it's so squishy and gluey. And if you think about a glue compressor, that's mainly what people are talking about, like an SSLG style. And if you have the plugins, like it's the gray, blocky style thing.
Yep.
The main difference that I notice, and I have to make a video on this, is like it compresses in the way, like if you've used an SSL style, like it's very reminiscent of that. The difference is what it does to the sides and like the weird widening that happens. It's really cool. And like going into the Neve MVP, it's just such a good pair. Like to have this kind of lobbing off those initial, it's not lobbing off transients. It's just like squishing everything together. And then this is a little bit more surgical.
Mm-hmm.
There, it can be more surgical. And that's kind of how I've been using those two in conjunction as far as like a master bus goes.
Yeah, you just turn the texture to the max.
Oh, yeah. Blue is so good. Like what it does to the low end is so tasty. And then there's the Fatso, which this is Empirical Labs makes the Fatso, but this is Kush Audio, which everything that dude does is amazing. His mod of the Fatso, and I freaking love it. It barely ever goes out of the glue setting for me. And like, put it on synths, put it on a drum bus, put it on bass. It's killer. I love it on keys because it just squishes in such a perfect way.
We've been talking about buzzwords. I love all these buzzwords here. Splat, smooth, and spank.
And then glue.
Yeah, and then glue. And then,
you can dial in warmth.
You have roast, comfy, and then, well, linked is just linked. But
linking them. Then you have like your trafo, like your transformer input. So you're going to get like more low end bypass and then just on. The warmth is really interesting because it's just a high frequency limiter.
Oh.
So like it's basically a separate circuit. I think it's a separate circuit. I'm not exactly sure totally how it works, but the harder you engage the warmth, the more it's going to lop off the top. We can actually play with it.
Yeah, let's do that. Hear how this works in action.
Let's see if I can do this backwards. All right. Ugh. Oh, this is uncomfortable. I should have thought about this. Go ahead and press that other link button with me. 1, 2, 3. Oh, we missed it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, this one?
Oh, no, we have to do this one. Sorry. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, boom. So you see how it's like chopping off main frequencies?
Yep.
And there it is out.
Okay.
Just crazy aggressive. And this thing totally depends like how hard you push into it too. But it's really tasty on a whole lot of different things.
That was quite the dramatic difference there.
Yeah, it can get aggressive, very aggressive.
Yeah.
And that is, normally I put like a trim plug-in before, because if you pull back how hard you're pushing, like it gets less aggressive.
Mm-hmm. But doing the same job still.
Yes. Yeah. It's just one of those, because this is a good tracking compressor to have around because there's not a lot to mess with and you can just quickly dial it in and it is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's done. Then you've got the Manley ELOP over here. This is kind of its own little interesting piece because they don't make this one anymore. The whole thing with that old ELOP is that you can't clip it. I want to put it on guitars and I'll show you what I mean.
Like you just can't? It just won't?
It will, but it's hard. I'll show you what I mean here. So, like you saw one of those sides was goosed right there. So you can push into this thing as hard as you want. And it's like, that's a whole lot of output just coming from that box.
Yeah.
And like it's clipping inside the box. Meaning like it's clipping right there. The newer version doesn't have the output transformers, which is the whole reason I like this box.
Right.
So that's a whole different thing to think about with gear. Like, how are you going to be using it? I like that because it's like I'm hitting something really hard and it's going to break up right here. That type of thing is really hard to reproduce in the box.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like the new style ELOP, unless I'm missing something, I don't really see a use for it in my workflow because I don't really need that like LA3A type of compressor, which is what this is kind of doing, like optical compression with like a crazy aggressive output transformer that you can just slam and not clip inside the box after that. So that's my favorite way to use it. It's basically like a clipper.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
Tube
guy,
limiter.
this is the TSL4V. This is not made anymore, and it's a stupid expensive box. This was one of the most expensive things I bought when I bought it. I think it was like $3,000. I think now they go for like 7 or 8 because you just can't find them.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, I found one.
right. And this is like incredible on vocals. Let's pop it on the vocal real quick here. This is just going to use one side of it.
Cinderella, we'll put it all together, we can drive it home.
And that's about how you would typically use it, is just slamming. And you can see like how hard it's hitting that.
Try a little.
Like it's burying the needle.
Oh, yeah.
There's got to be something better than in the middle. Me and Cinderella, we'll put it all together, we can drive it home.
Like it just feels done.
Yeah.
Kind of. It like does de-essing. I mean, it's absolutely crushed, but it doesn't seem crushed. And that's why I like that guy. Kind of LA2A-ish. Like the big white compressor that seems like there's 1,000 of them plug-in emulations of that, but
And pedal now.
Yeah. This thing is also killer on bass. It's just so tasty at locking down the low end on something.
Oh, yeah.
But
What do you, we've talked about this not like on the podcast before, but what do you usually run me through?
the bass,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like different every time.
I know. That's what I was kind of thinking.
If most of the time what ends up happening is there's so much going on and there's not a whole lot of space in the rack left. I mean, sadly, bass gets what's left some of the times because there's a lot you can do on the back end with bass.
Mhm.
But if I have my options, then that might change. But what typically ends up happening is you end up on one of the Ventex. And I'm not upset about that because these things are killer on bass.
Mhm.
Like even if I'm coming out of like the red DI down here,
Yeah.
which is a killer tube DI for bass or Rhodes or whatever you're going to use it for, I'll still go into like a Vintech to get that extra color because it just does something killer to the low end that I don't think even in some of the other 1073 style things like this does it just so well.
Mm-hmm.
If I have like a perfect world, you're in a 1073
Yeah.
because there's just as quirky as these are and as weird as they are, like it's really hard to beat the low shelf on this thing. It's so good. So good. If you go too hard, it'll break up in a really fuzzy way, which can be cool.
Yeah.
But if
I like
you,
fuzz.
yeah, if you go into it like a little chill, then that low end girth is just like it's not even from the bass. Like then it's doing it here.
Yeah.
There's just so much girth that it adds to whatever it's on. So
You're just getting a lot more harmonic content
yeah,
in that area.
yeah. Everything's a tool, and it's the flavors that you're going for and the things that you reach for can be different every single time. And I mean, even how I use it, I find different ways to use it every time.
So this one, the Audioscape, that's the newest one in the rack. Is that right?
Of all the gear, the Newton is the newest thing in the rack. I just got this like a couple days ago.
Okay. That's why it didn't look familiar to me.
This has been the newest addition in the Master Chain. I've had this for maybe 6 months, and I haven't been able to use it on anything except for the Master Chain. This is so good. I need to make a video on it, but it is really killer. I mean, if you and it's actually pretty cheap. I think it's like $700 for this thing.
It's too shabby.
No, I mean, for what it does and the flexibility it gives you, if you just want to hit something, it's hard to beat for that price. Double check me on that. Put it down in somewhere.
I'll look it up somewhere.
If I mess the price up, but it's fairly cheap. And having the side chain that is not present on typical SSL style stuff is really tasty and makes it even more versatile. Because I mean, typically you wouldn't use an SSL for something like really, really fast or like electronic style stuff. But if there's a lot down there in the low end that it's going to grab onto, that makes it even more versatile. And then, of course, the way I like to use it is like 30 milliseconds and then like a really quick release. Yeah. It just glues things together.
Every time I'm in here, I'm like, I should build out my rack.
I mean, if you don't have to go down rabbit holes like this, don't.
Yeah. It's just so fun.
If your focus is creation, like this stuff should be secondary very much. Like, because stuff like this can easily distract from creating, and you can just want what's the best signal for bass. Like,
right.
And you hear a lot of stuff like that, and even I'll talk about stuff like that from time to time, but it's just to be secondary to what is actually happening in the room at the time. Like, these are just tools. Like, if you're making something, like, you can use a ton of different hammers. Well, what hammer feels right? How much bounce back do you want? How much recoil do you want to feel? Is the handle coated or not? Like,
I think I'm a rubber mallet kind of guy.
There you go. See? And that would be the inward connections.
And then you got like your like patch bay type dealio over there.
Yeah, we can show that a little bit. So, I mean, the patch bay is just pretty, I think it can be hard to wrap your mind around if you've never used patch bay before. And if you walk into a space and you're trying to figure it out, you can definitely get lost in what those connections are.
Like the giant patch bay at that studio you're talking about by college.
Yes.
Sounds massive.
And everybody sets up their patch bays differently, right? And you're not going to know inherently what's going on. So if that is the deterrent, you're not alone. Don't worry about that. All you need to think about a patch bay is like getting something to somewhere else. So on the back of this guy, there's a bunch of different cables that are in pairs of 8 because this is a DB25 connection, meaning there's like one cable that has 8 cables built into it, and those go all over the rest of the place. So I have my ties coming in from the studio, so I can patch those into whatever preamps that I want, and I can make those preamps go either directly to the burls, meaning then it's going to hit Pro Tools or whatever DAW I'm using at the time.
Ableton.
Oh, man. So many phone calls today.
Yeah, you're getting blown up. Jeremy's a popular man.
So I can either send those preamps directly to the DAW or I can incorporate compression. Same thing, even during tracking, during mixing, I can go out of the burls into gear and use it like a hardware insert, which is how like we were just listening to some of the stuff to try to figure that out. So it's a whole next level of versatility when you get a patch bay. And you can either complicate a system or you can really simplify a system and make a setup go way faster via normaling. And that's most of the time, that's how I'm using it. Like, I know if I plug something in out in the room out there, it's going to come in on my favorite channel in here. Yeah. Just because I have it set up that way. And I can change that if I want to. So it's like, you can make it as simple as you want, and it can speed up your workflow. That's basically the whole thought process behind a patch bay, a well-planned-out patch bay.
Yeah. Got to ask you, there's no way for us to look at this, and I wouldn't make you do that, but what's the backside of this looking like? How's your cable management?
Bad.
Just none.
Oh, it's bad. Yeah, I'm not great with that. I mean, it functions, then I push it back.
Like, during your whole time doing all this, have you ran into a lot of problems with like your power cable running parallel to any of your XLRs? Or
That's one thing I try to do, but I mean, at a setup like mine, I'm not great at it. I have clean power, thankfully, so most of the job is done for me. And I try to route things. Was it perpendicular? So they're crossing. Yeah, as long as they're not running with power, that's about
Usually
as good as I'm doing. But it's you look back there, it's a disaster.
Oh, I can imagine.
Absolute disaster.
I have not even 0.1% as much going on at my home studio, and it is so hard to cable manage.
Yes. It's an animal.
And that is one of the reasons why you need to, if you build out a rack, you need to just fill it up, because now everything's hidden behind all your gear.
Yeah. Or get spacers.
But those aren't as fun. Spacers don't have knobs.
Actually, you can get spacers with knobs.
Oh, well, sign me up. What are some pieces of gear that aren't here anymore? What's been in and left? I know we've talked a couple times about your like vintage, was it LA2A that you had?
1176.
Sorry, yeah, 1176.
That thing's come and gone. I mean, other than that, I don't remember.
That's fair.
Like, if they come and go, it's kind of because either I learned something and let it go, or I didn't care for it. A lot of really weird, like under the radar compressors or like broken things. Because I'll try to buy broken gear and fix it, and that's how you can get killer gear really, really cheap if you know how to solder. Sometimes you can fix it, sometimes you can't, but if you buy it broken, you can pretty much sell it for the same price broken. So that's a really killer way to get gear.
Yeah.
That's how I got most of mine.
What's the troubleshooting process like for?
Not fun, but I mean, like.
Are you just prodding every little like capacitor to see like?
Sometimes the fixes are really easy, sometimes they're not. I mean, most of the time with older gear, it's like a blown cap. And if you can find a cap in the same like tolerance area, that's an easy fix. Not really safe if you're messing with broken caps, but
it's true.
Yeah, I mean, if you're careful, then you should be fine. Don't take that as actual advice.
This is not health advice.
But companies like Cush, I had something wrong with this unit, and all I did was I emailed him, and he sent me like a handwritten note of how to fix it and the part. It didn't charge me a dime for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he was like, "Hey, just pull this off." I think he took a picture of one and he circled, and he's like, "This is what you want to do." Sent me debrading cable, or like the
desoldering braid.
Yeah, desolder braid, and I was like, "Yeah, just pop this in, you'll be fine." And it was.
That's so cool. Also, Wizard just knows, like, oh, that's what's going on. Okay, this is what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, if it turns on, there's a good thing. Like, then you can pretty much fix whatever. I don't like to get into, like, if it won't physically turn on, I don't want to mess with power supplies. Yeah. Like, I've built my own power supplies. I don't like to. I don't want to do that again.
It always feels sketch, no matter what goes down.
Especially the one that powers all the 500 series racks. Like, there's the transformer, and that thing is ginormous, and it was not fun.
And it's just chilling back there. And
it's actually right there.
Oh, it's right here?
The big red thing.
Oh, you made that?
Yeah, not cool. If you pick it up,
I'll cut all that out so your insurance doesn't hear any of this.
That's probably a good idea.
Work hazard. What else? What are we missing over here? I mean, you've got just like some rack power. I don't think there's anything too crazy about that. But maybe, is there a myth to be dispelled about rack power units? Like, should you just get a Furman? Is there a reason why you shouldn't get other stuff other than?
I don't know. That's a rabbit hole I have not got down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not the right person to ask for that. I bought what I could afford at the time, and I haven't had an issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's about as far as I'll go with that discussion.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
I mean, I had the benefit of building the space, so separating circuits was huge. Like getting the gear apart from lights and doing what you can to like keep things on isolated circuits is huge. Mm-hmm. So if you can't do that, maybe you're spending more on power conditioners and stuff like that. I don't know. Not the right person to ask.
Yeah.
But the things we haven't talked about is the super old Digimax.
Yeah.
This thing is noisy. As soon as you turn a knob, you can hear it. But I mean, this is just extra stuff like talkbacks or things that I don't have to worry about the sound quality of. trash mics,
Mm-hmm.
any like all that stuff where I'm using other things because of flavor choices. Like this is the extras. This is just like basically an expansion of the burls. Essentially, I'm hanging that off of it, and it just offers me other digital inputs. So right now, this is powering. I have my Digimax going into it because I don't have to worry about. It's a Digimax. I'm not going to use burl converters for a Digimax. Like I'm just not going to do it. That's
You could though.
Yeah, you could, but that'd be really expensive for a Digimax.
You're throwing so much shade at Digimax.
No, it's a great little unit, but I'm not gonna use
There's one fella out there right now. It's like, come on, man.
No.
I love my Digimax.
Oh no, they're fantastic, but I'm not gonna spend the like $2,300 for another bank of 8 just to put a $100 8-channel preamp on it. No.
I don't know if that's the right attitude, man.
The other thing that the Avid's doing for me is it gives me 16 ADAT outputs, which is going into the Behringer hearbacks. And I know there's a lot of stuff with Behringer, whether you like them or not, that's fine. That was the only option at the time when I was purchasing it, and these are like 15 years old. So sub in whatever hearback system you want to use for that, but
it's always worked great for me.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know, as a company though, I'm not sure I would do it again, but
for sure. I get that
and especially
aspect.
now that there's other options out there that you can go that have equal track counts for that kind of IO.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
I think so. I think that's everything in your rack.
There's the monitor control, but that's neither here nor there. You could do whatever you want for that.
Mm-hmm. While we're here, we've talked about these monitors before, but now they're in the shot. People can see them.
Yeah.
So you want to say a little something about them again?
These are Dutch and Dutch 8Cs. I've used these in a couple different rooms. I really like them. They are very expensive. Things I like about them, and I'm glad I've gotten to use them for a while. I think I'm actually about to get something else.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I know the video I posted on them, if you go back and look, it says the last one. I know.
It's never the last one.
It's never the last one. I mean, everything has to be hyperbolic on YouTube. But if I wasn't searching for something that could do what it does a little cheaper, I could happily stay here forever. Frustrations I have is the DSP on it doesn't work all that great. Because that's like they're one of their main selling points is the DSP. And I know other people who have these and it works great. For me, I'm finding that that's not something that I like in my workflow. That's just not what I want to be dealing with a lot. Things that are dope about them is you can hear transients so fast. They do the phantom center thing really, really well. Like if you're coming from the world of NS10s, like, it puts the vocal like right in front of you. It's not going to do it in like a gross way, like an NS10, where you're using the NS10 because you like that gross thing that it does with the vocal, because you're going to get the mids right, because that's just blasting you in the face. These are very, very, they feel very flat and very honest and very, very quick. And that's what I've found, because my old twins, they're not really that fast.
Yeah.
They're cool to listen to, and they're kind of hyped, and they're fun. The low end is like nice and fun to listen to, where this is very honest.
Yeah.
Like, I think they're billed as like a hi-fi speaker. So like they were super popular in like the crazy audiophile circles, and then they've kind of found their way into studios, and they're great for that. I'm kind of curious what else is out there as far as like really fast transients. So I might be trying some stuff out here later, but these are killer. If it's on anybody's list, I mean, at least go listen to them. Try them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've heard them a handful of times, and it sounds great.
Yeah. I mean, they make tracking is really easy on them because you can hear everything so honestly. The thing I've learned from them, because if I keep coming back to like how fast the transient is, like I've learned more about compression working on these speakers for the last like 6 months than I have.
Because they can keep up with what's actually going on.
You
in
hear
there.
instant response. Like you can hear exactly where that transient's heading.
Yeah.
You can hear attack times and release times like so well. tales of things are like laid to bear. It's pretty cool.
Are you able to talk about what you're looking into?
I don't know.
This?
I have a couple more options. I'm sure if something happens, I'll
Then
make
we'll
a
talk
video
about
about it.
For sure. Do planar speakers get used often in studios?
Do what?
Planar, like the flat, and so instead of cones, because
I don't
I
know.
know that that's like a big deal in the hi-fi world.
I don't know actually.
Yeah, I've only ever seen them in like I said, like hi-fi audiophile listening kind of world, but I don't know if they exist in like a studio monitor type of environment or not.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the limit of my knowledge to them. I just know that they exist and it sounds like cool technology, but that's also been around for a while, from my understanding.
Speaking of cool technology, I don't know why I haven't been using this camera to get like good angles
Like
of you the
up
whole
and
time.
nose?
Yeah, this is what we should be doing. Look at that.
Getting that side
It's a
shot.
beauty. I hope you.
I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to you, and now I'm talking to you again.
There we go. Yeah, this works better for you.
We could start doing two camera pods.
Yeah. Should we move around? I mean, we should do the next one in the lounge and just talk about coffee makers.
Ooh, yeah. I do like coffee.
Yeah, but I just have like a Keurig and a French press. That's all I've got.
It's all right.
Be a very short video.
Well, is there anything else that you want to run a track through?
I think that's a whole other video for a whole other time. If you want to see something like that, I'm more than happy to do it. But I could probably come up with a better sound example for something
Makes
like
sense.
that.
Makes sense.
Because this is what we have been using. It's like a one mic thing. The video's about to drop, but this is all like one mic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That sounded pretty nice.
Yeah,
for
just a
being
single
one mic.
microphone. Even the drums were just one mic. But
Is it the mic that I saw out there over the drums?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
That's cool. That's cool.
Vanguard V44. I think at the time this will come out, the video will already be live. So
Okay. This will be Monday.
this one will be Monday.
Mhm.
Then maybe not.
Okay.
Look
So,
for it. It's coming.
You got an open slot,
Yes.
and we talked about this. You had this open slot months ago when the Sticks crew was here, and I'm going to have to let them know that you haven't filled it yet, and they're going to be very disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
What goes here, Jeremy? What are you going to put here? It's only a 1U, so
Yeah. I kind of want what is it? The overstayer mass, I think. Like a saturation plug. Let me make sure that's what this is.
that's a cool name if that's what it is.
Overstayer mass 2, this thing.
Okay.
It's like a saturation station.
Saturation
Cover
station.
both of our eyes. There you go. No, well, this ain't gonna work.
What kind of saturation are we talking?
I have only seen like examples of videos on it. I haven't gotten my hands on one, but every time I've seen examples, I'm like, that's awesome. Like
Yeah.
it's nice and saturated. Get dirty.
Saturated, like where it's almost treading into like effect territory, or saturated in
It
like,
can, yeah. It
okay.
can get pretty aggressive. But I mean, I like to hit things hard.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be redundant in a setup like this where I'm already hitting like some pretty colored converters. But
Just a different
I don't know.
flavor.
yeah.
Yeah. Last episode, we were just kind of joking around talking about your Santa list of gear, but is there any gear that would be a nice to have? Not that you aspire to get, but I'm thinking in the world of like a real plate reverb unit or something of that nature.
I've thought about getting an outboard reverb because that's something I don't have. There's an Eventide, the H4000. It's a dumb expensive effects unit, and I don't think I would ever on a normal plan like spend that kind of money on something because I think it's like 10 grand or something.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's dumb, but
Is it?
I've always been curious.
It's
about,
not just like a digital unit.
Yeah.
It really?
yeah,
Goodness.
yeah.
Goodness.
So I've been curious about that. Like, what's the actual difference in like taking effects out of the DAW? Because if they're all ones and zeros anyway, does it really matter? Maybe, I don't know. I'm curious about that. The other thing, what was it? I had one. Oh,
There is a a reel-to-reel converter on sale on Facebook Marketplace.
See, that just seems like a headache.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back to tape. I'm fine staying in the DAW.
I noticed that you have just enough space for a sonic maximizer, and you do not currently have a sonic maximizer.
Yeah, I don't. That's another one of those. I can respect you, but disagree.
Yeah. I also don't have one. I have one on my board, but not a rack unit.
One thing, if we're just talking like dreams, I know I kind of have access to a Shadow Hills mastering compressor, and I have been given permission to take it at some point and try it out.
This sounds shady so far. Sounds like a lot of hearsay. I have access and permission to take it.
I do. But yeah, I would love to get that unit in here on these converters and just see if the Shadow Hills mastering compressor is like, dude, that's a whole lot of hype. That's a lot of hype.
Yeah. But so have you gotten hands-on with it in that facility?
It's not even hooked up.
What?
It's not hooked up.
How? Why? Oh.
It's a whole thing. I think
There's
the goal
gotta be a
is
good
for it
reason.
to be hooked up, but it's not currently. So I would love to try it out and just see.
That's got to be so tantalizing for that person to just have it sitting there.
It looks cool.
Yeah.
So,
man. Well, I think this was fun. I mean,
different style,
different location. If you do want a little bit more in-depth on like a per unit basis, or kind of hearing some differences, or convince Jeremy to do that shootout between his Neve pieces here, let us know. If there's any of this gear that you all have that you really love, let us know what your experience is, and what should Jeremy fill his 1U slot with down here. It's empty, and I don't want it to be empty anymore. So send all the, like, what if you had this empty spot? What would you throw in there?
Well, let us know if you like this style of video, because this is very different.
Quite.
Even setting up the shot was really hard for this room.
We should have recorded that whole thing.
No, it'd be longer
Should
than
it
the
be
video.
here? Should it be there?
So I'm sure it's kind of awkward, but interesting information. I've never had a breakdown like this on the rack, so this was interesting for me too.
Yeah, I like it, and I like not only just like hearing what the different pieces do, but kind of the thought process. Because I think everybody, a different engineer, producer could come in here with the same gear and have a completely different thought process on how and why to use it.
Yeah.
Do you want to let this thing cool down, do some recs, and then wrap it up?
Oh, can I go like really aggressive with mine?
You always know that you can go as aggressive as you want with yours.
It's something I've been into lately, like Alpha Wolf.
Oh, yeah. I listen to Alpha Wolf at least once a day.
Okay, yeah. So I have no ties to this band other than like it's a vibe
It is.
in the right moment.
Yep.
Just super, super heavy and for no reason, but it's all good.
Or for every reason. That's not what I was expecting.
Me neither. That was not Alpha Wolf. Super heavy.
Is there a specific song or just...
I don't know. I get on and I just shuffle, man.
That's what I was going to say. I wouldn't be able to give you a specific song because mine's just on shuffle.
I mean, every time you pull it up, like it always plays. What is it?
Yep.
This guy.
Yeah.
And those morally pitch shifters put to work.
Mine is aggressive, but in a different way.
Okay.
Mine's aggressive in like the funk factor.
Okay.
Have you listened to Organ Freeman?
Yes. It's been a while. You
been a
showed
while.
this to me.
I might have, yeah. So my rec is Organ Freeman, which I think the reason I listened to them in the first place is I saw them on like a funk playlist and I saw the name and I just had to hear what that was because I loved it. But I got 2 song recommendations, really anything, but Go by Richard, not by Dick, is one of them, and Verve. But Just some instrumental funk.
It's so good.
It's very good. The song titles, some of them are pretty hilarious too, but it's just like high energy, feel good funk. Everybody's super talented. Lots of cool organ parts, but not the centerpiece of every song the way you might think it would be. So I like it. It's good stuff. So
Good pick.
make a playlist with some Alpha Wolf and Organ Freeman.
If you can make that make sense, you let me know.
There's like kiwi,
Like gasoline and cheese.
How'd you know I love that? I'm gonna say.
As long as you go with like a dark gasoline.
What was your drink? Kiwi and
Guava.
Pairs like kiwi and guava.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Let us know if you like the new setup, what other kind of stuff you want to see. And I already went through all the other things.
Post do they have knobs?
We didn't do an emoji for the last one.
Yeah.
Oh no.
You can clip it out. You can do one now.
We can do one now, yeah.
Do they have volume knobs?
Let's see. There's got to be some kind of like twisty knob type of deal. They do. Look at this. They have a fader and knobs.
Drop a fader. Drop a fader.
Drop a fader if you stuck with us this long. I think YouTube probably has the fader on there too. I don't know. Apple might be the only thing with faders, but
Or something that looks like a fader.
something that looks like a fader. And with that, we're going to fade out.
Peace.
Yeah, I'm just going to fade it out.
Peace. Is it dark yet?
Yeah. It's been dark for a hot second. I hope you know I'm keeping all that in.
Poop.
Poop.